hard at this time of the year, but I appreciate all of you that are here. The good news is nothing gets finalized tonight. The 31st will be a very, very important meeting for us. Really, we only have 2 meetings left after this one, the 31st and June the 6th. And if you guys are efficient with your time, you might be able to eliminate the June meeting, but we'll see, right? Wishful thinking. All right. You have an agenda at the table. You've got Q&A at the table. I'm going to go out of order of the agenda. What a surprise, right? So I want to hit the Q&A. I want to make sure that you see it because it is based on some important questions that you asked last time. We were put in the parking lot. We had a question about, how does this impact senior citizens if they file the exemption? The answer's there. Somebody or some people collectively wanted to know about past GCISD bond elections. I can tell you there was one in '93. I did not go hunt for the price tag. That's over 30 years ago. Maybe important, but I didn't go that far. You have 98, 2005, 2011, and then 2016. You have the years between there. You can see the district kind of averages about every 6 years. By the time anything goes forward, if it does, May of 2024, it will actually be 8 years. So it'll be one of the longest stretches between bond programs for GCISD. Somebody asked what the passing percentage was for the 16 bond, and there it is, 54.08% for the 248.9 million. Pretty low at that time. Voter education material at the time indicated that the INS tax rate would increase by 12.8 cents. But in effect, after the selling of it at record low interest rates, the actual cost for implementation was 7.66 cents. So much lower, right? 5 cents lower than what the community was told. A little savings of about 85, almost 86 million in interest costs. And then the next table, because you guys saw the elections that were going to happen in May, and what were the results. So here is some information for those that had multiple propositions. It tells you if they all passed, if there were 2 out of the 3 that passed, and so on, looking back at that same information. As you can see, a lot of good passage there. There were a couple of bond programs that did not pass for various reasons. Below that, in kind of the smaller print or font, it's just some statewide data if you have an interest to look at that later. So you can kind of see what the percentages were across the state. I will tell you that those percentages are much higher than they have been really in the last 5 to 6 years. All right, so percentages of passage have certainly increased even with the division into separate propositions. Any questions before we move on? This is information that you asked for. Just wanted to orient you a little bit before we get into the real work of tonight. All right. No questions then. We did have a group that went on a tour. Was that just last week? I guess it was. It feels like it was a month ago for me. But just last week, I guess on a Tuesday night, went to look at Collinville Middle School and Dove to kind of continue that conversation about replacement versus renovating both of those facilities. That was the table here at the front, so if you want to ask some questions of them, you're going to be able to do that tonight as we look at everything as a whole committee and a little bit less in your individual committees. All right, so the next thing I want to do is just kind of orient you on the agenda. The bulk of the meeting tonight is going to be to give you some time to work with the information that you received. I hope all of you were able to open the PDF that I sent, I guess a couple of days ago, and then had to resend last night. That is also what you have on the screen. So with this table up here, Calvin's going to be the driver in case you want to scroll and look at anything this way. There are a couple of hard copies at your table as well. And if you brought your laptop and you have it, you'll be able to look at it. And then the table's back there, you've got the interactive display. And folks there that know how to operate that so that you too can scroll up and down just to look to see where things landed, or when we get into recommendations to move things, we'll be able to see that and place that live on the spreadsheet when that time comes. Music. Who's got music playing? Mine? Well, not me. It's my watch. That's first. Where is that coming from? That's awesome. All right. Yeah, it still is. Anything else turn on? All right. Oh, spreadsheet. Yeah, we're going to stay on the spreadsheet. Then getting back into the agenda a little bit, I do have information for you that we'll hit at the end of the meeting after your work period to talk about bond capacity, because this is a question that's come up. You know, how many pennies would it take to reach a certain level and so on. Again, we don't really want you totally focused on the dollars. Your exercise and your role is to rank things in the priority that you believe they need to be, right? What is the highest and most important? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I have brought bond capacity information that I'll share with you towards the end of the evening. So, let's get to the meat of the work that you're going to be engaged in tonight. The spreadsheet, if you noticed, had right at the top one line item. It was highlighted or colored in gray. You can see it here, right? And the score for it is a 5. Now, do you remember where that came from? That's that $64 million package of deficiency items that the district identified as being very important in order to keep schools running. All right? So it's there as a 5. If you have questions or you disagree with something about that, and I asked you to bring that spreadsheet with you, if you did, then when you get to working in your groups, call me over, and we can talk about some of those items. I'm happy to answer your questions. If not, as you can see, it's going to go forward as a part of the overall recommendation with the highest score possible, a 5, right? Because it's 0 to 5. And then we go on from there, and it's okay if multiple things are scored a 5 or not, because at the end of the day, right, what is this spreadsheet about? What information does it communicate?
The highest priority.
The highest needs and priorities, right? The way that you've determined them. But now you're seeing it all collected. It's all been merged together. You're not just in your individual groups, although you're sitting that way, but now you're looking at all of the things. The 2,500 and however many lines of items that we have in this spreadsheet. So now you've got to take a 30,000-foot view and think holistically about everything that's here. One of the first things you got to make sure is that the things you presented to each other as being your top 10 priorities, you need to make sure that they're in there and they're kind of highly ranked, right? They probably need to be at least above a 4, maybe a 4.5. And so be sure you're looking for those things you presented as your top priorities. Does that make sense? All right. This spreadsheet is a communication tool to the next committee. Again, about what you believe those priorities are. And that's being ranked based on importance. We've already talked about the grade deficiency package. So I'm just, as a pointer for myself, one of the things I did was go and look at anything that scored below a 3, 2.99 and down. Because that's probably not going to stand a very good chance into making it into anything. And the next question I asked myself was, is there anything there in that group that I can't live without? Is there anything there that's going to affect school, affect security? Some of those things that were important in my mind. You need to do the same for yourself, right? And as your group, have that conversation. Is there anything there that you feel like needs to be elevated, right? Or at least you might want to make that pitch, and as the room, as a committee, you're going to have to agree on that. All right, so that's, kind of looking at the 4 to 4.5 up, anything below a 3, and then there's the gap in the middle, right? We don't know really where the line will get drawn, so you might want to look at, well, what did get ranked as a 4.8 or a 4.7? And do I agree that that is a higher priority or more important than some of the things that made it to say a 3.6 or a 3.8? And you can't look at every single line item. You've got to look at kind of what I'll call buckets of things. All right? I think in today's day and age, security is really important to most people. Parents, at the workplace, all of that, right? You can spend a lot of money on security. Not everything that every vendor wants to sell by way of security is absolutely necessary or really going to accomplish the task, right? But many things do. So the last bond committee felt it was very important that we have secured vestibules at all of our campuses. And so they made that a very high priority and put that into the bond. So not all things are created equal, but if you believe that security items should be ranked highly or they're the most important, you need to make sure that those items are high on the list, right? There's a risk if they're at a 3.5 or below. Let's just be honest. So you might want to look for those major items. I will tell you that the PA systems, public address systems in schools, are the primary form of communication, especially in an emergency situation. They certainly are used for a lot of other things as well, but certainly for that. That's an important item, right? So we need to look at where PA systems kind of came out in terms of the rankings. Because again, you want to recommend changes if you feel that they're important and they're necessary when we start having the more holistic conversation of the entire group. Right? I'll give you some other examples. I think replacing doors, for example, are kind of high on people's priority list in terms of hardening and making sure there's not an easy way to get into the building. That would be another item. From a safety standpoint, you probably saw a lot of things labeled with the word safety. Well, not all safety items are created equal, right? A trip hazard is a problem. That's an unsafe condition. Is it more important than having a door that locks and secures? I don't know. But that's for you to interpret and probably come to consensus on, and let's just make sure that we have certain things ranked where they need to be. Because now you're looking at the whole picture, right? Totality of all of it, not just the little silos of things that you were looking at. Certainly you want to look for your things. So I'm just going to call some things out for you to take a look at. There's a lot of conversation at the last meeting about Colleyville Middle School and whether to replace it. Did you notice? It's a 4.47. What came out number one after the grade package? The Colleyville Middle School stage, of all things. Just the stage. Paul's very happy back there. It's a 5.0. They ranked that across the board. You'll have to ask yourself whether or not you feel like there are other things that ought to rank a 5 or a 4.99. Now the next line item happened to be replace portable building at Timberline, which I believe is in reference to the LAC. Y'all remember the conversation about the LAC? Why am I pointing it out? I'm not trying to pick on it. I know the Blue Committee ranked it really high as being very important to replace. But what I want to draw your attention to is that there are also some line items that you rank highly having to do with the renovation of this building or expansion in addition to this very building that we're in that would include moving the services provided at the LAC into this building. So there will be some either ors that we're going to have to look at probably as a district this summer as we get there. But in terms of the rankings, you need to think about that in terms of what gets included. Yes?
Can you explain I'm confused, like, all the rankings are like in the threes, but then the very last column makes it a 4.99. How does that last column?
Well, remember that you had the percentages going across the top of the rubric, and everybody's scores are now combined here. So what you can tell is that the yellow group put a 5 on everything.
No, what I mean is on the second row, when you get to the end, it says 4999, but it was a 374 average.
On the gray line item, there's
On the
nothing
gray
above
line
it,
item.
37.
Like, how does it get to be a 499?
Which column do we look at?
See all the scores add up to it.
This far right?
It's confusing.
David, the weighted value, column L versus the one right before it, labeled weighted value.
Column L was the adjustments to the scores by either the blue committee or the red committee when they adjusted when they equally
Some of the
averaged
scores.
the score, equally summarized the scores, so we made the adjustment there.
All right. So I'm glad you asked that, because I forgot to mention that. Remember, I did say at the last meeting that this table had increased some of their scores, so that's how. And you guys did that with some of your common items that you grouped together, and you said, hey, let's make sure that those are all scored the same. I don't remember one of your items. So we just want to focus on the last column, because that's the ranking. That's what's driving this spreadsheet in terms of where these things have come out at. All right, so a couple of items. The technology items, not too bad. Most of them are in the 3s. There are just a few that are in the low 3s and a couple that are down in the 2s that you might want to take a look at. All right? One of those has to do with the virtual server environment. Now, Dwight is here, and so is Todd. Raise your hands. Take a look and talk to those guys. Make sure you understand what you're basically saying no to. All right, as a full group. Everything else, like I said, is in the 3.3s to 3.8. And 3.8 is pretty good. Lower than a 3.5. Who knows where that line is going to get drawn. There's a line in here, district-wide infrastructure for cellular service. There were actually 2 as we went back through this. They had different amounts on them, and so there's a line item that we as a district need to make go away. But here's what I want to point out. The cellular line of the highest dollar ranked at 2.61, which is fine. It was a $25 million price tag unescalated. I totally understand that. There was another one, though, that kind of suggested it was at a single building, and it was a 4.29. So that's the one that's got to go away, because this was supposed to be a district-wide line item that Mr. Berger presented to you early on into the process. There's another line, a D01.115, district-wide. It talked about shelter reinforcement for all buildings. So I want to clarify what that is. The architects have explained to me that you really can't create a shelter in an existing building. That's usually an addition or when you're building a new building. You can harden spaces to attempt to create spaces that are better than others in terms of when a tornado or something like that might come through. So you'd have to pick something that's kind of central to a building. Think about your hallways. That's interior, that doesn't have glass, that could be hardened for as many people as possible to run and get to when they know a storm like that is coming. It doesn't mean everybody will get there. Depends on how fast it's coming, right? And how much time you've had notice, but otherwise you'd be there. There are ways to harden hallways. That had a $20 million price tag. What I don't want you to go away from here is thinking that that's a certified shelter area. It's not going to be that. I just want to make sure that informs your thinking as you're prioritizing these things, all right? Because we didn't have a lot of conversation about that. Any questions about that? All right. Buses were in the 4s. Congratulations, Manny. The SUVs were about a 3.4. Those are used to transport students, much like a bus, so I just want to make you aware of that. The vehicles that are used by staff, primarily auxiliary staff in the maintenance department to get around from building to building, are in the 3s, low 3s. That's a little bit of concern. If some of those vehicles are already in the 10 to 12 year age range to possibly take a look at. The district-wide campus allowance is something that the Blue Committee put together. So they took a bunch of small things, said, look, a lot of this is never going to make it. We're going to combine some of these things in terms of concepts and create an allowance. And it came in ranked at a 4. So it's elevated up there in the rankings, but it allows the campus to have an opportunity to do the most important renovations that they determine are necessary when it's time to go renovate their building. Okay? So that was the thinking behind what they did there. Let's see, is there anything else? All right, and then let's talk about this building. As a group, you seem very committed to creating an early childhood center here at this building. I think The green team presented it, most of the room, consensus. Jessica's like, wow, little bitties with the big ones.
No, let's not do that.
They don't have to be connected.
Yeah.
All right, so that line item ranked as a 4.06, so it's up there. But there were some related line items that may or may not be part of your thinking, and so if you've got something to write with, I'm gonna throw out some numbers for you so you can make sure they're where you want them. Line item A01.108. That is to actually expand this building to also add offices for athletics, fine arts, C&I, and iUniversity Prep. I think you remember a presentation about needing PD space in this building, right? To renovate these spaces and maybe expand this building for additional professional development space for staff. That's A01.131. It ranked 2.98. And then there is A01.127 that was a holding area, kind of storage and being able to cart things to other parts of the building. That ranked higher than I would have thought, 3.2. And then the line item D, like David, 01.122, ranked 3.3. That is to extend this building to create the services of the LAC that I mentioned before, and a space for the testing of special needs students. So at some point, we'll have to kind of clean up what the intent is with respect to this building. Obviously, the Early Childhood Center that was presented is the one that's ranked the highest at the number that I gave you. All right. I think that's probably enough in terms of just pointing out some areas to look at and make sure that that is kind of what you had in mind. Do you have a question?
Did Dove as a new campus?
All right, you're ahead of me. Because there's not a line item to replace Dove. And so that's a question I had for kind of conclusion of the meeting is, are you asking the district to put that on the spreadsheet so that you can rank it? And we can do that. So I know there's a strong desire out of some of this group, I don't know if it's everybody. Collectively as a room, we'll just go ahead and poll you right now since we're on the topic. We have Colleyville Middle School as a line item in there. What about putting Dove on there and letting you rank that? All right, I've got to have, what's my percentage? 60. So hands up
Do you want it?
if you want a line item to be able to rank. All right, we have what we need to do that, so we will add that to the spreadsheet. Any other questions before we let you get to work?
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Probably should ask this day one. What is, if you remember, may or may not remember, what is our current bond debt? And then the second question is, when does it drop off? May or may not know that.
I do,
Okay.
and I have it with me, but I'm not going to share it with you. Yeah. That'll be at the end of the meeting, because I really don't want you to fixate on numbers and costs. Notice that you don't have them on the spreadsheet. Look at this in terms of what is the highest priority and importance, that need that you feel like needs to be there. We're going to have to work on the dollars, especially for those things, just like the renovation of this building. What all is really intended to be in it that we'll have to merge together and put an appropriate cost on, right, before we get to the next committee. But we're getting there, right? So I do have that information. It'll be interesting to see. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a reason why the last 3 pages with some of the high scores are at the back and not the front?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Bless you.
Just wondering.
David's coming to see.
These last 3 pages, like they're 55544, and then,
Are they repeats or they should have been at the
and
front?
then, then you get into the zeros and ones.
The first 3 pages made it to the back?
Oh, is it just mine?
Really?
Just?
Yeah, there are no page numbers on the one at the
Did I
table.
miss?
I have another copy.
Do I win a
Oh, wait,
prize?
every page is page.
Exactly.
What prize is that?
But the one that you got last night had page numbers on it.
I'm Mine are all one.
That means you're a third bit.
The hard copy is.
Exactly.
I don't have this.
No, Amy, you do not win the peanut M&Ms, I'm sorry.
Maybe the top 3 pages are the ones.
Yes, probably.
Okay.
Could have been the printer. But, that's the top right there, on screen. Cal is here for your group, this front room. She's here to move that spreadsheet around for you if you need to. All right, so I'm gonna let you begin your conversations.
Okay.
Probably. I'll give you both of them, this one and that one. and then-
See, there's this, okay, and it's just a picture, and that's what because it's like, well, it's, and so,
Like you're saying, like if a teacher.
yeah, we need to figure
Yeah,
out.
it's like right here cluster, this team wasn't together originally, and so we were trying to think of like
Have one where the data just translates.
yeah, but that's not.
And then the ability to teach consistently.
Some of the other
There were some of them that.
It's kind of about certain chunks, making sure it's, you're within a certain group. Again, I have no idea where the line would be. And there's some things that I'm gonna suggest.
I know.
That's right, that's right.
Those things that just are important.
Oh, these teachers need to one teacher.
When I change it, I change
Oh, this is.
Like, honestly, that,
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm back.
I think
See, now
another
we're-
thing we can look at is Probably at least about 3 cents. We might lose the ability to say
But she's putting a line item on there for you. Yes. Just one, like campus.
Well, that's the thing I think.
The only reason why I think that we were like, we're anti-scene, because like I would keep telling him something, and I would call the operator, like, I need to text him, and I'm like, but he can't.
Really.
So we have to get the Wi-Fi. Okay, no, this actually helps, because then they come over and like, man, I didn't do Okay, sorry. Do you think we should like that we just bring allowance and average those to get an accurate number? Or is it where we just wait to see what sorry.
The one policy that we're reading out, right, that Bear Tree, the entire campus Wi-Fi.
We didn't take that off.
Well,
Because that's the.
I'm not deleting it, but yeah, I wanted to make sure you guys saw it, know where it's ranked. Well, we need to make that recommendation, $25 million before escalation.
That's what I'm saying, like, we don't feel like we're on campus, we have
Right. It was intended to be a campus district-wide, that's why it's $25 million, the way that Kyle presented it. He didn't recommend it for their executives, because so many of the campuses said, we gotta do something for facilities.
Right, so now it's,
Right, enhancing your Wi-Fi is really important. That's cellular. Wi-Fi is internet.
So also, if you're getting that rate this summer, but for the purposes of the bond, you're talking 5 to 7 years at the end. The hypothetical bond is 24.
Pricing it up there, you know, it's gotta be faster and wider. Think of it as the major highway through which everything goes, right?
So it's kind of like catch we're doing it right now, but if you're talking about 6 years out, you need to have money in that case.
Wi-Fi drives, what's going on in the classroom, CPA, your doors, your everything. So personally, it's more important than your cell phone.
Yeah, you need to prioritize
When it
Wi-Fi.
starts getting labels like that, you're like, I wanted that, but I know it's not gonna happen. Like, no one knows what to do. We have to help.
When did school end?
Yeah, like,
Actually, I avoided the building so loud. That little room is so loud. Okay, so we need to downgrade.
Why?
There's like 6 of us here, but I think we just.
Okay, yes.
What you got?
What other color, what other item is based on, and is it same, is it different, or is it identified?
Lower, is that we need to make sure we need it. Yes. But I just want to make sure what kids are on their.
I'd like to ask this question first. Talking about the students.
So is this, that line item, reliable Wi-Fi interrupts connectivity moving from one room to another, is that what?
So you're gonna, if not,
Yeah, what happened was we graded most of the PAs before I heard you explain how important PAs were. We didn't see
So my question is, there's a district-wide.
You should be able to sit in an office and talk about this.
They were talking about like where to go.
But that was before I got here.
How do we?
yes.
I mean, when I came in, it was already that way, and then doors are not, and that was just GCISD. But that is after. So I think I can
Or is it about power?
Like the PA.
Well, someone that because Wi-Fi network is down, because you don't have anything for children. It may, we may
You would say something about we need to make sure we understand something like why are trying to explain to us to be able to rank low, we need to really know.
So virtual, this, you heard that?
Oh, I heard them, but I'm talking.
Is that ours or is that somebody else?
Instead of, do you need the, you have the GCISD and the
Yeah.
Most of them are wired, they're wired into IP speakers rather than copper. Copper wire.
So when you guys.
It's technology.
Yeah.
You guys have that
Except our battery backup. Most campuses have, well, the big campuses have an hour. Yes, this is powered. It's not a generator, it's powered. No, actually, part of it's attached to the network as well when they inserted that new part. You just can't service them.
Yeah.
The head units are not made.
Yeah, student.
I think there's a lot of there for radio infrastructure.
There is a lot of radio.
Some of the things that are. Still separated out. That should be
Oh, it's just a.
And then you have to.
But still. We gotta whack this one. Yeah, yeah, but there's some.
We found that I think it was out of their order. And we've been
Well, that put together.
As they're spending the dollars.
And then we need to start looking at how much
That's something that we can all agree on, that we, PAs, district-wide line items.
Yeah, we want to get where we need to have it.
And we're assuming that a district-wide encompasses all of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Last week, last $60,000. Last week we talked
I think it's just a waste of that day.
Yeah. Lots of us are. But they can be proactive. Like she said, we can rank anything the same. It looks like someone turns to you, and so they'll get some more. Precisely, yeah. As we lay out that whole. Our employees, our inspectors.
I've been jotting some notes of that conversation. Definitely want to look at technology and laptop and definitely ideally district-wide allowance. We're looking at possibly having them put in painting, possibly flooring allowance. Individual. Like that idea. That's what you need to do. Prioritize. Yeah, the next 10 years. All agrees that the order replacement make sure it makes the cut.
Stop it.
I didn't have a chance to look over it.
That's the way to go. To me, you're
The other one that Paula mentioned, we haven't talked about much at all. Staff was going to be, she said that was low threes. Maybe the district employees could tell us. You know, I think that we took that, I'm not sure exactly what those were.
But that's not necessarily the actual library, that's just saying like furniture, like 65.
You want to pay for that? Anyway, he gets back up to the building and live right
Is there anything that was just mentioned that y'all disagree with or saying is not a good direction to kind of head towards?
Was that, but that was just, that was just, we're talking.
Yeah, Becky told me she
But then this allows whatever they need. And I guess, yeah, like you put stipulations in like. But in theory, if you said, okay, you have already 5 years.
So what does that look like?
Okay, I want to use this for this, and then.
Right.
we had already purchased all that. And so this would be better included with like, well, we provide books in English and in Spanish, but other campuses don't have that. Yeah. We could use it for books.
What gets replaced and what doesn't. You guys are there every day, you guys have to have it.
But that's why I appreciate the speech. Like, if you're not want your input, want your okay. I think if we go back to them and say, hey, we don't get to call any decisions all the time. You're really good at the resources out there provided. Make it more our idea than their idea. Which is kind of what we're doing.
That would be fine. What we need to do is actually build a list of those things that are becoming a line item like that, so that we know what we were looking at for 20, and when you get there, you decide, is that still the priority? And is it going to apply here? And take care of part of this perhaps when it's time to make a space.
And that's, I will say, the Baker Street. All of the grade.
I think you should add that.
This is all I have to go by. But I mean, she has like a 3D printer, and they're just more
Thank you for your
equipment, and they're able to do so many things.
So you parking lot lights are not LED, wall packs are not LED.
You guys are gonna have to look to see that there's something on us to change.
So you guys know, you guys piece of it. Well, at least kick it down the road.
So it was 65.
65, 100.
Oh, you're right.
It's a big number. And so maybe, what if we, instead of replacing everything LED, what if we make it to an election? Get $9 million in bond package to take some of the most important LED upgrades that we can.
Yeah, we'll continue to get you lights here, but your out, your parking lot lights.
Now, still, some of this, and actually,
Buildings.
oh, is this gonna be?
A lot of things like that.
So one of the things that we
suggested combining like the library line item that we do with the library.
Never made it to me.
Right.
Yes, you can now.
Okay,
Yes.
so, because we had talked about, you know, take the books, the maker spaces, and the furniture, and we had one of the libraries, right by now. And our thought was, because, I mean, they're all very renewal and very close, we tried to do as much as possible, but they were low. Right, and we say like we want all of the libraries to have spaces. Does that make sense?
Or what I suggested,
That's what this
elementary
should
library, middle school library.
Because I think that they should get a different
Amount. Yes, that's exactly what the last time we did. So we have 2,000.
So we can take out all of the individual libraries and the ones that we want. That's a line item, figure out what yeah, we actually are.
And what that number
More
is.
different than I thought, like some of them, you know.
So where did like most?
Yeah.
So now painting, flooring, LED lighting should be in the 47.
You've got it right now. You have it right here. Awesome, why is it not?
Yeah, I asked Paul, so not I didn't ask Paul, I asked Calvin.
Just make sure we have some.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you get a hold of the sheet, do you take your library collection or do you?
No, you take the library.
You're right, I thought you were asking the.
And that actually happened in Cambridge when we built the new school, right?
So that's where we were.
When it had more space, because they had a smaller library.
Now I want to buy more. Get that.
So we had to go to the board and ask them to create a library. I mean, dealing with this obvious stuff.
Right.
Yes, like somebody said to me, well, building a new school, what happens is most of the furniture, it's new stuff, right? That's gonna go. Now, we're gonna have more spaces to have, so we will need to have additional ones for like holding when it comes time. But you would take a lot of it.
So where did we write that they were made?
Whatever Mrs. Emerson to give to me either tonight or she wanted to write in something like,
Okay.
sooner or later.
Yeah. Like this is kind of our proposal.
Yeah, yeah. And then for changing some of our scores, we're gonna have to.
Right.
Yes.
We'll give you the final score.
The final score.
Devices, teacher devices, student devices.
What we changed to,
Smart boards,
thank you.
We're about to find out. Sorry, man.
And the other thing is like,
Never know.
Make it like, yeah. I think there's another page, yeah, let's just make it a one. And then the library.
and that's in Brown and facilities together.
Okay, so what are we gonna score the competition?
Yeah.
good to put some out there.
That should be. I think it should be 01.
And that was smart. Down, changing it to 4.5.
So that one's deleted though, right?
Well, we're gonna make it a 1.0.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scoring it at a what?
1.0. Yeah, if we can remove the
We gotta get that.
5 out of 5.
Where was one? Before staff devices. It's farther back. Okay. Okay, well, I can staff, staff then I'll find
I have a cellular Wi-Fi at supports and chat.
Student 1-to-1. District line student. Have one for books, for furniture.
District wide.
So we can just find elementary.
Do we need to list each one of those library line items?
I wouldn't say each one, but I think we should be able to have, well, no, like whatever the line item says, like if it says library. Yeah.
Yeah, and just give us that one number for that one line item, so we at least have that.
Okay, so why don't we
So save them some time to go back.
What was the anticipated?
There's a description, so give us the total description.
So there
Sorry, I'm not helping at all.
Okay, I can go.
So it's listed, what's his captain, what's his badge access?
I've got it.
For example, I was there with you guys gave me to create collective plans, I have an overarching tone of each campus. Elementary, middle, and high schools would have a grouping, these would be rated as middle and
Wouldn't they just go about it? Yeah. I've got high school.
Now let's move on.
We don't need to because we've done it. Okay.
I think they need to.
Okay. Yeah. Got it.
So the last thing on our list is the list. So I do think we should say on there that.
Oh, I just saw that. Playground floorboards right now. Right now, oh, that was just under Silver Lake. Split it, oh, it was split up by every So same content. There's PES, it's over 337, Silver Lake is 338. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If I could just check in with the room, are you ready to make some recommendations?
So, let's see. I think so.
Table in the back? Paul, are you guys ready to make some recommendations back there?
Almost.
Okay. What about over here?
We're getting really close.
Really close? All right. What about this group up here? Do you have a list of recommendations?
I've got Silver Lake.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, D10.
And Amy, what about your table? You have some recommendations? Okay.
So if we just did it the same, yeah, district line item instead of. Let's see, Silver Lakes was 3.38, Dove was 5. Would that be, if they renovate, we know, might not even need it. They might not just in our house, if they've been on a different. Yeah, was it? They talked about it, but it's just different, it's a different, yeah, I would like that. Oh, it's 1-1, so I have.
If they decide to not, then that recommendation. Because I do find that
These recommendations and let.
Yes.
We're already separated.
Because you start doing numbers and I just want behind.
Well, I never understood that you were
that all goes away. We were doing 3.5. Yeah. To me, this
All right, just a heads up. In 1 minute, we're going to pass the mic around so you can bring forward your recommendations, because we've only got 15 minutes left for tonight. All right, you ready to roll? Who's got your list? Things that you're recommending that we have to remove or change or whatever. Okay? All right. 1 more minute.
Yeah, that we don't have to, that don't work as lockdown.
All right, folks. Which table wants to go first? Which group? Right back here, Lauren. Dr. Sykes? Who at your table speaking? All right.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay, working? Yeah. Okay, so you just want me to tell you the items that we think should be moved up, like categorically or?
The things that you've kind of put on your list that you are proposing to the district so that we can make some changes between now and the next meeting.
Okay, so there's a few things that we do think needs to be elevated, such as the turf, like the turf fields at the middle schools that need to be elevated just because of their life cycle. And if we miss this, then like it's gonna be unusable. So we need that, those spaces for our kids. And if they don't have turf, then they can't do their sports and any other, interactive issues that we would need with other schools and whatever. So we were thinking that we would need to elevate that. Also, the servers. Servers are huge. If we don't have proper servers, it's hard to conduct the learning required from all the devices and all of the infrastructure in order to make our school district run properly, from those standpoints. So, but also we have some suggestions, like on the servers, like there's several line items. Is there a way to group those, like into one?
Yes, I think what I understood is that you guys were gonna recommend that all of those be combined, that we have a line, if you will, that's gonna address all of the server needs of the district, and then that would be elevated, or whatever you just, you're saying to put on it. That's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that seemed to be more efficient, just all in one, because
Sure.
it's really hugely important. Let's see, what else? Also, kind of along those same lines is like, for athletics, and fine arts, like, one maintenance package. Like, what all needs to happen as far as, at the varying schools as opposed to like 28 line items, or whatever. Just so it gives the group more of an idea of what is needed.
Kind of like a line for instruments, one for equipment replacement.
Yeah, and for athletics, it would be like, there's a number of line items that include tennis nets, and
Yes.
basketball court repainting and things like that, which when you add them up individually are, a few $100 here and there.
But you're gonna tell me which ones you wanna group together.
We can if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Okay, we'll do that.
Absolutely. That's kind of what this group did when they created those allowances for campuses, so that we have an intent and scope, right? Because I can't walk into the next group and go, well, they just decided there'd be this allowance, and we really have no way to prove to the community what it is that we're talking about, what's intended, what it will cover, and what it will do going forward, right? 3 and 4 years from now. All right, sorry, keep going. Great.
Okay, and so, in fine arts, we did think that the instruments needed to be ranked higher, just because obviously those reach their limits with usability as well. And if we don't get that in, then we have unusable instruments that don't benefit any of our kids. So, we thought that needed to be elevated. And then, let's see, we talked about the athletics maintenance package as well, like having those items, as far as ranked, promulgated together. And so, is there anything figured out? Oh, the weight rooms. We think that should be elevated as well. We talked about that, because just seeing all of the presentations on that and the equipment and so forth, it seems that like that would also be something that would need elevation to ensure that it gets covered.
I know you have a quorum of your group that agrees with those recommendations. Does anybody have a problem with what they're suggesting or recommending? All right, great. Anything else before I move to the next? Make sure everybody gets a fair shot at their time here.
That's pretty much what we discussed.
Okay, that's really good for starters. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
All right. Who wants to go next?
We will.
They were faster.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm ready.
Hello everyone again. We, in the last several meetings, put together budgets to cover a number of items. So that there's custodial budgets, grounds budgets, as opposed to asking for a mower and a weed eater and for the other items. So we created budget line items, which are D01900. We've elevated those to a 4.75 ranking, which gives the opportunity for those departments to spend that money accordingly, and it captures the scope by line item, scratching those individual items. Similarly, we did the same thing for campuses, which covered items like hydraulic changing tables, cleaning cots, upgrades to office furniture, window blinds, campus storage, teacher lounges, for each facility to be used as they see appropriate. So we approach those as an item, as a full allowance rather than a budgeted line items. On ours, we also had the LAC portable for replacement. Understanding that might fall under a different project scope, we're dropping the ranking of that one to a 3.5. And to piggyback on the yellow group, there are a few line items that addressed server needs, virtual storage network, and some other items that we feel would be better appropriated up with that budget too, and scooted over to that category.
Okay, great. I know you had a consensus of you're for tonight, which is great. But we got feedback prior to tonight's meeting from some of your folks that were not here. Anybody have any questions or any concerns over what they have recommended or done? What I want you to understand is when these allowances get combined or made, created as they did, the kind of the items that they outlined that make that up, that went into that, we as a district are gonna hang on to so that we can always show what the intent and scope was for that line item, okay? So that there is still accountability behind that, especially as we talk to the next community group and certainly wherever we go after that. All right. Lauren, where'd you go? Oh, there it is. Please, thank you. There it is. Thank you.
Okay, we updated a few things based on our conversations over the past couple of meetings. And we had this idea, but we never actually put it, I think, into writing to make sure that the line items were updated. So we had shared previously that we felt like we should take the individual line items that we're asking for library books, library maker spaces, and library furniture replacement and do just a one line item per campus that would be the same per campus for all elementaries to do just library updates. So whatever that campus needs, whether that was a furniture piece or whether that was specific books for their collection, knowing that each campus kind of has different needs in that regard. So we said to combine all of those to one elementary line item, or one line item per elementary school, and we would rate them all the same at a 4.25 because we had slight variations. Same for middle schools, same for high schools, and we just took the combined dollar amounts and recommended just combining those amounts for what they already were at. Then we also said we wanted to decrease the score for the one individual elementary school that had the cellular and Wi-Fi that was ranked very high. And we wanted to downgrade that to like a 1.0 and or remove it if we could because we felt like that needed to be included district-wide. We said we wanted to elevate smart boards overall for a 4.5. We also wanted to elevate student and staff devices to a 4.5. That ranked very high on our original list, but then when we looked at it in the grand scheme of things, it was not as high. We felt that was a top priority. And we also wanted to remove the individual line item that talked about talked about a space for child find. We wanted to remove that because we felt that that might be included in the line item for the renovation of the PDEC. Okay. And then last but not least, we wanted to, two more things. We wanted to elevate the score on print management up to a 4.0 because we feel like that's essential and needs to be included.
Is that because Dwight's at your table?
Not specifically. I will say I'm a huge proponent of that as well, as are my teachers. My teachers would get rid of every printer in our building if we had 2 copiers that worked.
I'm going to remind you of that, Nancy.
And, well, I will say, Dwight was slightly convincing in that he said the copiers could have color capacity, and that's what the elementary teachers really want.
What a selling point. Go on. The rest of the list.
Last thing was just making sure that we had, again, equality across campuses and that all of the core boards for the playgrounds were all ranked at an even 3.35, which was approximately half.
Okay, yeah, I did see where those were. Perfect, thank you. Very good. Anything for this group? I know they had a consensus or quorum. Yes, sir?
So on the library, all the schools get the same amount of money for the library. What about a school that was built maybe 2 years ago versus one 20 years ago? How does that?
So we asked the same question and we said, so when Canon was built, did Canon get all new library materials? And the answer was no. They take their library collection with them. So.
And they weed books too.
Yeah. Well, I think his real question though is if you're gonna create an allowance that's uniform for every elementary school to update furniture or update books or update whatever else they have, AV equipment in libraries, and Canon's brand new, did it get all brand new everything, and is that stuff as old as all the rest of the campuses? The answer is no, it's not as old, because they did get a lot of new, they did not get new books, for sure. But in about 5 to 10 years,
Yeah.
their furniture is gonna have to be pieces. These allowances are not to wholesale replace, for example, all the furniture. It's to deal with whatever finally broke, the table, the chair, the whatever, some of the AV. So there may have to be some consideration as to the dollar amount that someplace like Cannon might receive, a brand new school, if you're building it, as compared to some of the campuses that, as you pointed out, are 20 years old.
But I also think it allows people to, or it allows each librarian in each campus to get stuff that they specifically need, versus if you say you have $20,000 for a makerspace, but you really don't need $20,000 just for makerspace stuff, but you need books, it kind of allows them over the next 5 years to buy what they need. So that was kind of our reasoning, and giving a little bit more in theory to middle school and high school, because you're servicing so many more students. And furniture is more expensive at the middle and high school because it's bigger. Books are more expensive, and so that's kind of our thought process behind that too.
I'd like to add to that process on our side when we determined the allowance. These were items that would be covered in this allowance that are gonna rank so low on a normal conglomerate aggregated list that they're not gonna make it onto the bond. These are items that are important at a campus level, but they're not gonna be important enough to make the bond. So they need to be on an allowance like this so that they can be addressed individually by the campus.
And remember, we said when we got to that campus and it was time to renovate it, where we were in need of replacing certain equipment, it would be up to the campus at that point, and maybe some others in the district, to determine what's the best spend of these dollars at that time for that campus. Now, I will tell you that as a district, we need some systematic way of doing this, because you can't have one campus that has all of this and the others don't. We don't want to have create more inequity issues, if you will, just by what does this campus have that I don't have. So we will, that's why keeping the intent scope behind it is important. One of the things he listed was the changing tables. Everybody had a need to replace changing tables. So that's included in this. And that's a uniform regardless of how old, right? Oh, nurses' cots, yes. All of your cots are in bad shape, for sure.
Not all of them, but a lot.
Except for Cannon.
A lot of them,
Except for Cannon.
like 95% now.
We also took all those line items, got the dollar amount for it, and then reduced it to an 80% total rather than 100% of those items, so an overall reduction in cost.
They basically cut the budget 20%. Of what was requested, just like that. All right, this group. Lauren? Who wants to go?
So we talked about, with our group having all the glamorous stuff, like the aging, rotting kind of stuff. And we're actually pretty hard graders, and we started looking at where things fell in the pecking order of these super big books. And just the reality of if some of these things don't get funded, we will have either non-functional stuff or really dumpy looking buildings after 6 years because we couldn't maintain them. So we started coming up with a list of what we thought would be things to just make allowances on. After we saw that some of what we've done is like you have some of the PAs would make a cutoff and some wouldn't when they all have the same obsolescence issues, for example. So the list that we came up with was having a technology allowance, PA systems allowance, door replacement allowance, cellular line, staff vehicles, painting, flooring, LED, mechanical and plumbing equipment, some district-wide evacuation chair cabinets that I almost understood what they were, but they're really important, and elevator modernization. And the idea is, rather than drive ourselves crazy looking for all these lines, these are all really important things. We need to figure out what's a good number to put on them so that they would make any cutoff to be discussed. Because our numbers, even on this sheet, are way lower than the ones that you guys just threw out. So I think we might be stingy graders and we don't realize it. That's my summary. Not to throw the team under the bus or anything.
Just a little more conservative in your numbers.
Yes, we're more conservative. Oh, did I miss something?
A little more frugal.
Oh, then you got the chair cut.
Yeah.
That was just,
Yeah. So we got that one too.
All right.
There you go.
Did we get everything? Calvin? Yeah?
I'm gonna tell you what I have technology, PA, door replacement, staff vehicles, LED lighting, mechanical and plumbing, elevator updates. I think I missed one.
I can give you this piece of paper.
The evacuation chair?
Oh,
What is technology?
Cabinets.
I got it.
What can we
Cabinets.
mean by technology? That was like the second item.
I think that was the hardening of the doors, wasn't it?
No, that's not
security, just the technology. Oh, I'm sorry, cameras.
so cameras.
As in replace cameras, add cameras, all of the above?
Some of the servers and everything.
The servers are gonna get taken care of already?
Yeah, so the network so it works.
Okay, all right. Excellent job, Kel. We got everybody else's list too, but we're still gonna collect your lists, all right? For those of you that want to stay, I'm happy to go through the bond capacity information with you, but it's 7:32. It is past your bedtime, so I appreciate your work. Please reach out to some of your teammates. Make sure that they understand kind of what the conversation was like tonight, what your group recommended and did. The next meeting on the 31st is really crucial. If we could have as many people as possible to really continue this and really kind of start getting to a final solution, right? It's still going to be all the stuff ranked, but you're really starting to elevate and send that message of what are the highest, the most important things that we see among the needs that the district has presented. So I appreciate that. Any questions? Yes?
Do you have dollar amounts associated with those at that time?
I can. They're actually there right now. We've just hidden them. We can. You want to see like from 3.0 up what that's going to cost, right? I knew that was coming. That's right. All right. Any other questions before I let you go? If anybody wants to stay, yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
Either or discussion.
We can work, we can have, try to have it. All right. If anybody wants to stay for bond capacity, let me know. If you do, come closer to the front of the room and I'll run through this very quickly. Are you asking me a question? Yes, keep rolling if I'm on. Is anybody staying? Yes, okay. All right, go back to the front. All right, this is just a quick snapshot that I wanted to share with you on the district's debt management from before. There's been a total savings of about 133 million. Right? Yes. That's here talking about prepaying debt early. It's going to factor into the length of the debt.
Once I get moving, I'm good. It's just the initial.
And the amount of the debt that we have. But by making prepayments, this is just kind of the bond and refunding when interest rates went lower. That was really where the bulk of the savings came from. As interest rates dropped below their historical numbers, we were able to refinance, just like you did your home, and lower the amount of the total cost. All right, scroll on through. I'm not going to spend any time on this. Go on. I'm using somebody else's presentation. Just very quickly, something that I think is important for you to understand and know, as it will be definitely for the next committee. Right here on the left, Calvin, if you could scoot up, I think this is 16, 17 down here. So, oh, I'm off, 17, 18. The total tax rate for GCISD was 1.3967. This much was M&O, maintenance and operations, daily operations of the district. This much was the bond debt at the time, 35 cents and a little bit of change. So you see, running along the same, right here. You see the district here on the debt side dropped at 2 cents. So your school district dropped the rate. I know a lot of communities where that never happens, all right? This is also at the time that compression started with the state. So you do see $1.04, 97 cents. So there was a cumulative right here, then a drop by the district. More compression going into this current year, right? Debt, the amount being brought in, tax rate, from 32 down to 22. You've heard me mention the 10-cent drop previously, okay? So district in total over the last few years has dropped the INS collection side of the tax rate by 12 cents. Part of that is because property values have skyrocketed, which means the district was bringing in more money, but you don't need to do that much money, all right? Okay, next. Oh, go back, since I have your attention. Right here, interest and sinking fund, used for annual debt service of the debt, go up just a little bit higher. Maintenance and operations, right? Used for day-to-day. House Bill 3, the state essentially dictates the district's M&O tax rate. Because as collections rise, school district gets to keep the money or not? No. Recapture goes up, the amount that the state is giving you goes down, or stays the same, right? So that part never realizes any additional money unless what happens? What do you have to have more revenue?
More kids.
More kids. Great. Good job. All right. Go on. Thank you. All right. Look at this. Average taxable home value has increased 28.95%. Boy, haven't we felt it, right? The tax rate, right, have increased 4.4% over that 5 years. So it really is about the property values having gone up that we feel when we get those lovely blue statements, right? And as property values rise and more tax revenue is generated on the M&O side, where does that go? Somewhere else. All right. We're going to move up. All right. I need to say that. Keep going. You are.
Oh, okay.
We already covered this information, the 54% pass rate, and I had already given you the votes for and against, so we'll scoot on up. All right, bond capacity. Scoot just a little bit more. It's interesting how this thing is. All right. This is the principal amount that the district owes on existing bonds. Bond capacity is obviously a combination of property values increasing, your debt payoff, right? It all starts to kind of move together to create whatever your capacity is, depending on what rate you're going to tax at. You can see where the debt is going to kind of wind off for that principal of 304, whatever that is, right there. So what is this? 2041.42. So we'll move to the next slide, because I think it's a little bit more interesting. These are the different bonds. If you were closer, you would see this was the 1998 series. So everything that's red is right here, and it's going to be paid off really in the next year or so, right? And then you follow the colors. Here's 2016. Over there is a 2013 and a 2016. So this is the district's outstanding debt and how it's getting repaid and at what pace it's getting repaid. So what's going to be left out here, of course, is related to the most recent debt, the 2016. And so with that, you can see in principal and interest payments, really what we have is about 19 years left with what we currently have. Going again. Oh. That's not good. All right. The principal, 311, interest, 141, for a total of 453. Think about some of the bond packages that people just passed. Greater than the amount of debt that GCISD has, right? You can see that when we borrow money, historically, it's 45 cents on the dollar. And typically, when you're paying mortgage interest rates, even at the historical lows, it's been higher than when you're doing bonds, which is good as far as that is concerned. All right, we'll keep going. We don't need that. This is where we're going to scroll through about 3 or 4 pages that we're going to bypass. This is about callable debt and when you can pay it off early if you have the means and the money to do that. And you remember that's one of the things that's being looked at legislatively. Just the interest rate history. You can see over there on the left-hand side is the year 2000, up at 6.09%. Historical low down here between 2020 and 21 at 2%. And currently sitting at about 3.53. I think as of Monday it was 3.58% on an average. Keep going. So when we sold the 2016 bond, we hit it at the right time, as far as that is concerned. This is about increases to the property values. I don't think it's any surprise for most people. The significant increases have happened going into 23-24, estimated to be almost 12% increase. Now, whether or not that's what you realize, we'll see, right? Because they're talking about the homestead exemption and everything else. You can just kind of see the history, though, going back to 14, in terms of the district's growth, 4.43%. A big one in 16-17, then coming back down and leveling off, really in the 7s. Obviously, in the COVID year, it dropped down to 2.63. There was a loss in terms of values coming right out of COVID, and then the big jump going forward. All right. It's pretty split as far as the combination of who's paying what in GCISD. Single families represent 47%, and business commercial is about 41.7% of the revenue generated, with a little bit, as you can see in the other slices of the pie. Next. So the scenarios. Poor Josh, I made him work through 7 scenarios for you. The first one is what can you have for a no tax rate increase? Scenario 2 is 5 cents. What does 5 cents get you on the tax rate? And so on, 10, 15, and 18. And then just for grins, what's a $500 million bond program cost in terms of pennies, and a $650 million bond program? By no way am I suggesting that that's the size of the bond program. Go up. Just different scenarios, because I've been asked lots of different questions. You have to have assumptions, right? Nothing static. So we went conservative with the assumptions. In order to maintain the current 22.17, we do have on the books right now and planned, and the fund balance to do it, which is that prepayment of the Series 2013 B bonds in February of 24. And the district, as far as I know, intends to still do that. If the new program is sold in August of 24 at 5%, so we're going high. Right now it's 3.8. We're using 5 as a high, right? Assumes the district's estimated tax assessed valuation remains kind of constant. What it's reached, it's just going to kind of stay right there. I'm not going to get into talking about TIFs. It helps subsidize a little bit of the INS rate. We just have to hope that that remains consistent, and other revenues to, again, do some of these other minor repayments. All right, keep going. So those are the basic assumptions. Again, repaid annually over 25 years for the longer assets. Remember, software 5 years, computer equipment 5 years, new buildings would be basically paced out at 25, and everything in between. Okay? All right. A no tax rate increase equals $119 million. 5 cents takes you to $247.2 million. 15 cents is $503.43 million. And then these two out here, right? So we're going to go up. I'm going to show you monthly and annually, if you will, what that equates to. So we're going to go up a little bit more. Okay, scenario 3, I forget how many pennies. 0, 5, 10. $375 million bond. 10 cents. Literally the 10 cents that was dropped, if it were to return, would give you that tax rate and would allow you this amount for a bond, right? Just over $375 million. And so on and so forth. It would take 15 cents to do 503. I guess at 500 even, it's a 14.87 cent increase over where it's sitting at right now. So the 10 that it was before, plus another 4, whatever, almost 5 pennies, right? All right, if you'll go up 500. So using the average taxable home value in GCISD, of $497,171. That translates into this annual cost for you, right? So this one's $248 for the year, $500 for the year, etc. Now we'll go monthly. Next slide. Same value. This is what it means on a monthly basis to people that have a home value of that, obviously more or less depending on what the home value is. Okay. A reminder that they're frozen as of age 65. That is bond capacity. I think those are the numbers you guys have been really curious about. I don't think I have another slide after that, do I? Thank the people that put the information together and let me borrow their information and data. Any questions?
Bond capacity doesn't have anything to do with student population.
That is correct. Strictly property values and the tax rate. And 100% of that stays with the district currently. There are no bills on the floor to move recapture into that arena.
Can we go back to drop off?
Go back to which one?
The drop off?
The drop off?
Home values? No, when the last spots will drop off.
Oh, yes.
I just want
Way back. Okay.
Oh, you want me to go now?
Yeah. It's way back there.
Yeah, it's way back.
That's a good one to look at. All right. Right, the 98 series getting paid off. The blue is the 2013 B series that they're still a little bit at. Different, I don't know if those were variable rates and then fixed rates and certain things got extended or prepaid, and so you see them in different lines.
The current was 450, 453, 254, 263. Maybe 2 slides before that.
Our total debt? Oh, okay. The total debt. No, I think it was going back the other direction. Right there. So we have principal and interest there combined, 453.2. Currently. Yes. Okay. Anything else? That was really fast.
It was just interesting to see the no increase scenario almost covered the grade book with 5-year escalations. Not quite, but almost.
Great observation.
He's on our
Yes, he is. All right. Thank you so much for staying. Have a great rest of your evening.